Welcome back to Honda Garage, Idaho. In today's video, we're going to take a look at working on this 2011 Honda Fit, removing the front bumper and grille assembly, as well as removing or replacing the headlight assemblies or just the bulbs inside. I've got some custom headlight assemblies that I want to use on this build, so we're going to dive in and take a look at the process. Let's get started. So to start, let's take a look at just replacing the bulbs in your headlight assembly. If the assembly, the housing itself is perfectly fine, you just have a burned out bulb, they're quite easy to access here. We're going to start with the side marker bulbs up in the corner. So when your parking lights are on, that's when this bulb illuminates. This bulb and this bulb down here for the turn signal are both in plastic sockets, which just need to be rotated counterclockwise about 45 degrees to remove. These ones that are up in the corner are fairly easy to access. We'll just grip the plug, turn it, and remove straight back out. This corner light bulb is a 194, also known as a 168 bulb. They're super easy to find, super common, and cheap to replace. With the socket removed from the housing, the bulbs just slide in and out of these metal contacts in here. Press the new ones back in, super easy to replace. If you do have a damaged or broken connector here, the part number for that is on the screen. You can either get pre-made pigtails with wire to crimp on, or new actual pins and seals just to crimp on the end of the existing wiring to put into a new housing. And Honda's part number for this specific socket is also on the screen. On the corner light bulb, it's this tab right here. You can press that down to remove the connector separate from the socket. When you go to reconnect it, just make sure you hear the click of that locking tab securing it in place so that connection stays secure. Now to reinstall, we just need to line this up with the hole here in our housing, but you'll see that there is one locking tab there which is larger than the other three. There's a bigger hole in the side, and there's a corresponding tab on our socket which is larger, and it is this one right here. So when we go to reinstall this, we'll make sure to line those two up. So that it fits all the way into the headlight quite snugly and makes that seal, and then we'll turn clockwise to lock it back into place. Similar process, of course, for the turn signal. Counterclockwise turn to remove, pull straight back out from the housing. This bulb is an 1156 bulb, and it comes out a little bit differently than the side marker bulb. You actually have to press down a little bit first. You can see it's sort of spring-loaded at the base. So we're going to press down on the bulb and then turn it counterclockwise to remove. There's these small bumps on the side of the bulb, and those correspond with these slots, these little grooves in the side of the bulb socket. And you'll see they're actually not centered across from each other on the bulb. They're actually slightly toward the bottom, as shown here in the video. And you'll see that the grooves in here are also not centered, so make sure that you locate those in the correct direction for reinstallation. To reinstall, we'll press all the way down to make sure that spring is compressed, turn clockwise, and when you let go, they should be locked in their grooves and all set. Once again, there is a larger alignment tab on the socket and the cutout, so we'll just make sure to align that before locking our bulb into place. We can also unplug the turn signal wire from its socket. The locking tab is on the bottom facing downward here, so we'll just press upward on that tab to wiggle that connector out. And you can see there's the tab on the bottom. We just press upward to loosen it. So that's it for the two other bulbs, and now we get to the main bulb, which is our low and high beam here. This socket doesn't have any tabs to press down. The wire just comes straight off the back. There's going to be three simple spade terminals there. So this wiring will come straight off the back, and now we can see the back side of the H4 bulb that is in this headlight housing. To get it out, we're going to remove this factory dust cover by pulling on these little tabs here to separate it from the headlight housing. And as we look inside here, we can see this wire that runs around the bulb, and that's what's holding it in place. This looped end right here, we're going to press down on that and then upward toward the top of the car to release it. And it is got quite a bit of spring tension in it, so be a little cautious there. This little loop area, this hook, is where that wire sits to hold the bulb in. We can push that out of the way for now, and then our H4 bulb can be removed directly backward out of the headlight housing. Be super careful not to touch the glass of your new bulbs at all, as that will make it super quick for them to burn out with any contaminants on the surface. The H4 bulbs have 3 locating tabs on them, one that's on the top and then 2 that are close together down on the bottom side. So again, when we go to reinsert our new bulb, we'll just make sure that those are lined up correctly in the housing. With the bulb correctly lined up and seated in the housing, we can bring our retaining clip over and press down on this tab to hook the wire back into place there. That's where it sits. So make sure that's fully secure, and that'll keep your bulb in place in the housing. And then we'll replace the factory dust cover. Make sure all 3 of those pins come out through that center hole there, and just give this a press all the way around to really lock it in place. And finally, we'll reinstall our plug with 1 tab facing up in the center. Just give that a good firm press, and that's it. That covers the basics of just replacing the bulbs. Now let's look at removing the front bumper and the actual headlight assemblies. Our first step is going to be to pop the hood from inside the vehicle and prop it up using the rod here. The first piece we're going to remove is this plastic shroud that comes over the top and fills this gap between the grille and the radiator support. And that's just held on with a bunch of these plastic push clips. There's a total of 8 of these push clips, and they come out fairly easily with a pry tool, just lifting up on the center head until it's released like so, and then the clip itself can be pulled out. These are super cheap and easy to replace, so if you break the tabs off on a few, especially if your vehicle's older and they've gotten brittle, it's no problem. You can find these at pretty much any parts store for very, very inexpensive. A flathead screwdriver also works here, but these pry tools come with most trim removal tool kits, and they're a lot easier. And it makes it a lot easier to pry the head up with even pressure from both sides without chipping off bits of it at a time and making it harder to remove. With those clips removed, we can take this plastic piece off, and there's actually a small gap in here that mates over the top edge of this grill. They'll kind of lock together when this is in the proper place. So you want to pull the back side of the plastic up first, move this backward a little bit to get those out of that little groove, and then we can remove the complete piece. Next up, we're going to move down to the corner of the bumper that's right next to the fenders here above the wheel, and there is a Phillips head screw straight up inside here that we're going to remove. And it can be helpful to actually turn your wheels one way or the other to get access to that, or jack up your car a little bit and make some more space. And you'll need to repeat this on both corners of the bumper. With that screw out of the way, the bumper is actually free to pop out of the plastic clips that hold it up to the fender that run behind here. It does take a little bit of force sometimes. There we go. If you need to, you can use a plastic pry tool with a cloth or something around it to avoid marring, but these are the clips inside here, and these little slots on the bumper just press fit into those and snap into place. That is important to keep in mind when we go to press these back in, that they're aligned correctly. That'll help your bumper reseat without any large gaps. Okay, with the bumper corners done, then we're going to move down to the underside of the bumpers here. We've got several more fasteners to remove. Right on the corner in front of each wheel is another plastic push clip that we're going to pull out. Then looking more toward the center of the vehicle, we've got 2 Phillips head screws here, 3 plastic clips underneath here, and then the 2 more Phillips on the other side, and the last bumper clip on the corner. So we're going to remove each of those. This is definitely a spot where it's helpful to lift the vehicle a little bit so you have access to get tools and yourself underneath there easily to see and remove the fasteners. Now, these lower fasteners can be especially tricky to remove. They fill up with grime and dirt a lot faster and often just jam up and need to be broken out of place. The head on this one just totally came off without ever actually releasing the center pin that's inside. They get full of dust and gravel and stuff, and then they just won't separate cleanly, so feel free to just rag on them a little bit, break them all the way out, and then use new ones on the reinstall. All right, so now that the bottom of our bumper is loose here, we're almost ready to remove it. There's also clips underneath a bracket here that runs along the bottom side of each headlight. So that's the last thing that's holding this in. It can be helpful when you're ready to take this off to have a second pair of hands, one person on each side of the vehicle. It is possible to remove and reinstall it yourself. It just takes some time to get the alignment right. So let's go ahead and pop this the rest of the way off. As we pull this bumper away from the headlight, you'll see that black plastic tab that's in there. It can be helpful to slide a plastic tool underneath and lift that a little bit as it's coming out, just to relieve pressure on the tabs and make sure you don't break anything. But that's how we're going to do it underneath both headlights, and then pop the whole bumper off entirely. So here's a little bit better look at those tabs. You can see on the bracket underneath the headlight, we've got these mounting tabs here that settle down and lock into those. The final thing we're going to look out for as we pull this off is behind our grille here. There's two large plastic mounting teeth that pop into these spots on the bumper here, right above the crash bar. So those will also snap out as we pull it away. Finally, with the bumper loose, don't pull it completely away from the vehicle yet. Our wiring for the fog lights is still attached, so we're just going to gently set it down on a towel or something right below so we can disconnect those. So disconnecting the fog lights obviously is only a problem for sport owners that have them from the factory, or if you're one of the people lucky enough to have an add-on kit that featured the ones for the base bumper. But either way, similar to the headlights, we can twist the bulbs counterclockwise to remove them backward from the fog light assemblies, or we can unplug the connector by depressing the center tab here and pulling the connector off the base of the bulb. There we go. This is an H11 bulb if you're curious, but I'm going to be doing a separate deep dive video on removing and replacing the fog lights in the future, so stay tuned for that. And with the fog lights disconnected, the bumper can now be completely pulled away from the vehicle. And if you are interested in removing the grille, there's 4 of these push clips, 2 on either side here, plus a Phillips head screw right on the corners. Once those are all removed, the grille can be pushed forward away from the bumper, keeping in mind that there's little tiny plastic tabs here that'll all have to be pushed up and over, sort of like this one is, to clear it and move it out. But now with the bumper out of the way, we can work on actually removing the physical headlight assembly, which is held on with a few 10mm bolts. We've got one down here close to the fender. There's 2 in the front corners of the headlights near the grille, one on top here, and also one down underneath here that'll have to be removed. And finally, one up toward the back close to the windshield. We'll take that off as well. Of course, before we pull the headlight assembly off the vehicle, we're going to want to disconnect the wire harnesses like I showed earlier. We're going to depress the clips, pull the wiring off the H4 bulb. With all the hardware removed, we're going to start by pulling this bit down by the lower fender outward from the car a little bit. There's a small plastic locating nub that'll get in the way. There's also a locating nub on the top tab of the headlight here, so we'll lift that upward a little bit to free it. You can see it poking through right there. And with that, the headlight assembly can be easily removed from the vehicle. That's going to be the same process for either side of the vehicle. One thing I do want to note is on these mounting tabs here that secure it to the body, you actually can get replacement tabs just for these. Honda sells ones if you break them off that attach to mounting points on the headlight. There's small little stubs here that you can use screws to attach new ones right here. So you can actually order replacement brackets if you have a headlight that was shipped to you, for example, and something broke off in shipping, but the housing is still sealed and usable. You can get replacement tabs. The other thing is the bracket on the bottom side here. If you're using new headlights, typically they don't come with this bracket that holds the bumper up under the headlight. So we do have to remove that as well and reuse it. Removing this bracket is super straightforward. We have a single 10mm bolt in here, and then the whole bracket kind of rotates off. There's a couple alignment pins that stick through on this side. So we're just going to remove that, and then this bracket can be taken off. There is also a little locating pin in here, so we'll just lift that up off of there, and then this comes away. Now, if you're shopping for replacement headlights, every headlight that came on the 2009 to 2014 US Honda Fit are interchangeable physically. And no, I'm not going to cover any of the other market headlights, European, Asian, that kind of stuff. They don't fit. They require front-end conversion. If you want to see a video on that later, let me know. I'll look into it. But today we're talking about just the US headlights. The 2009 to 2011 Sport trim come with this all chrome version, which some people prefer. I have that on my other Fit. The 2009 to 2014 base models come with like a medium gray version, and then the 2012 to 14 Sport models have a glossy black version for the plastics inside. So keep that in mind if you're shopping for replacements. I do recommend looking on Rock Auto. TYC and Depot are the brands that I go to the most. They're usually the best quality out of the aftermarket brands. Stay away from anything that's super cheap on eBay. Those will fade, clear coat will peel everything so fast, and usually they're not packed great for shipping. So Depot is my go-to brand. Check those out if you're in the market for a new set of base OEM style headlights. Keeping with the off-road theme of the build, I went fully custom on these. No, they are not DOT legal, and no, I will not be using them on the street for regular driving. But these feature some custom LED accent lights for the driving lights and turn signal, and super high power lights from Diode Dynamics for off-road use, low beam and high beam. There's a Spot SS5 here for super distance projection, and then a little tiny SSC1 tucked in where the factory turn signal used to be. So these are the lights we're going to be installing on my car today. Reinstalling the bracket, we'll bring it over to the corner here and line up those pins with the holes in the bracket. With those in place, we can bring the other side down onto its pin and then reinstall the 10mm bolt. As I said, I custom built these headlights myself too. They feature some 3D printed and laser cut and bent metal brackets for mounting the lights while maintaining the factory aim adjustment, which I think is pretty cool. As we're reinstalling our bolts and hardware here, there's 3 bolts for the top, side, and front corner down here. This 4th bolt that doesn't match is the one that goes underneath the bracket in toward the radiator. Now, I did utilize some of those plugs that I was talking about earlier to maintain plug-and-play wiring, so I don't have to hack or splice anything up. Now, for my build, I do have LED strips down here for the turn signals. If you swap out for something like that, or even regular LED drop-in turn signal bulbs, you'll most likely need a resistor for hyperflash. I covered that in my taillight video as well, and we do have one up front on either side here for the headlights. I like to mount them straight to the metal frame down here, or even right here if you can find a clean spot there. Looking great so far. We're going to go ahead and get the bumper reinstalled here. If you are interested in retrofitting or customizing your own headlights, I would start by looking up some YouTube channels such as Lightworks or Flyride. There's some great tutorials out there for how to open and modify your headlights. If you want me to do a specific one, let me know. I've done a bunch of these, and it's always a really fun project, especially a one-off design like this. Once you're ready to reinstall the bumper, don't forget to reconnect the fog lights if you have them. And if you're working by yourself or with someone else, take plenty of time to line the bumper up and make sure everything is fitting where it's supposed to be. By the way, if you have a North American Honda Fit and you want to disable the half-power high-beam daytime running light that it comes with from factory, you can do so by popping this panel down to access the fuse box and pull out this 7.5 amp fuse right here with pliers or the included fuse puller tool. That one right there. It's noted as daylight on the factory fuse diagram panel here. and that feature is instantly disabled. Now, I personally don't recommend doing this on a safety principle, but if you are, for example, running retrofitted headlights with different LED DRLs that are hooked up to an accessory fuse, or some other circumstance like that, that's how you disable them. So your headlights will be completely off when the switch is set to off, and then your high beams will only activate when the stalk is pushed forward. Now, I do want to take a second to talk about the headlight adjustment. The Honda Fit doesn't have a horizontal aim adjustment, but we do have a vertical one right here. It's this silver gear on the back of either headlight. And you can use a socket and a wrench right here with like a 10 or sometimes a 12 or an 8mm socket, depending on the brand, to turn this, or you can use a Phillips head screwdriver in the top right down through this slot and use the Phillips head to turn the teeth on the side of the gear. Either way, that's the vertical aim adjustment, and it's super important to adjust this whenever you change out the headlight housings. Make sure they're aimed correctly. For that matter, even if you're just changing out the bulbs for an LED like the Road Manners projector bulbs, it's always a good idea just to double check that it's pointing correctly so you're getting the most out of the bulbs you're using while not putting light in the eyes of oncoming traffic. So you can turn that little screw on the back of the headlight clockwise or counterclockwise to adjust the beam up or down like I'm showing here. You want to park on a flat surface, 20 to 25 feet away from a wall if you can, somewhere level, and make sure that the beam is just sloping gently downward, an inch or two maybe at the most for every 25 feet that you're parked. And that'll give you a gentle slope downward to throw your beam as far as possible while keeping light down below other drivers' eyes. And this is not a hard and fast rule. I find myself adjusting headlights multiple times after I install new ones, just after driving them at night a few times, getting a feel for where they're positioned and making fine adjustments. So play with it as you need to, but please do make sure and check that your lights are aimed correctly if you're changing them out. And that's about it. Aside from how shiny and new these look compared to the rest of the body of the car right now, I think overall this installation is pretty simple. It's very straightforward to get the bumper off, not many fasteners or tools required. And it's possible to do yourself if you just take the time to make sure everything lines up right when you put it back on. So that's the process for removing and replacing the front bumper or the headlight assemblies on a 2011 Honda Fit. Might be different for the facelift 2012 to 14 with the larger grille, but hopefully this information that I provided helps you out with your project, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see repaired or customized next. Thank you so much for watching.